you know what I can tell you 10 years later? It was the amount of wasted effort that we spent on contracts doing GDPR stuff, addressing GDPR. Every time we had
Oh,
to
yeah.
sign up for a new customer, like just inefficiencies, like for what? For what?
Yeah, it's insincere. It's not true. Whoever has
It
more
is not
leverage
true.
wins.
It's
Yeah.
privacy kabuki theater.
The Adversarial Podcast. Why you gotta be so adversarial? It's time to get adversarial.
Hey guys, hey Mario and Sunil, welcome back to the Adversarial Podcast. Good to be hanging out with you guys as always. Hope things are going well.
Hey Jerry, going well, thanks. It's a nice sunny May.
So it being Friday, May 8th, yesterday, Thursday, May 7th, we're sitting in a weekly meeting here at Adversarial, and I mention that because I also teach at Georgia Tech. And we have more Georgia Tech degrees than employees here at Adversarial, which is pretty funny because I don't even have a Georgia Tech degree. It's like we have several doubles. And one of them, who's a recent graduate, so I guess he's still like plugged in with Discord, and I'm just guessing, and all these other Georgia Tech current students, says, hey, Jerry, can you get to Canvas right now? And
What
so
is
I went
Canvas, Jerry?
Oh,
What
yeah,
is
I'm
Canvas?
sorry.
Yeah.
Canvas
I'm sorry.
is-
I've been out of college for so long ago. They didn't even have computers
totally
when
know
I
what
was
you mean,
attending
yeah.
college, bro.
Canvas is like when you used to go to the chemistry building because all the results would be posted on the door with a piece of tape with your social security number and the grade. Does that translate to your age better?
They didn't have social securities when I was in college, bro.
No, I remember that when I was at Clemson, we literally would have them posted on the wall, and it would have the social security number.
And it was their phone number, not their
Of course.
last four.
Yeah, I mean, can't risk a collision. So Canvas is a software product made by a company called Instructure, which until relatively recently was a public company, and that's kind of interesting in itself. And then it was taken private by KKR a couple of years ago. And it is ubiquitous. Like over 8,000 schools are on it. So he says, hey, and it's where, as a professor, all the assignments are, all the reading, for my online classes where the videos are that they're watching. For most classes, it's where the discussion is happening. In my class, I happen to use Slack, which is like, riding dirty and living fast. But I'm glad I did yesterday because I went to Canvas and it said Shiny Hunter's message. Boom, right there. And it's hosted by, it's a SaaS platform. And long story short, it's not Georgia Tech, it's Instructure. And then the headline started spinning pretty quick that maybe all, but at least most of their customers were affected by this. And so what is a non-Georgia Tech university? I just came over Virginia Tech, so I typed in Virginia Tech Canvas, boom, they use it too. Clicked it, same Shiny Hunters. So I thought, oh man, this is a big deal. And so that, and the message basically said, we popped Instructure a week ago, and instead of paying us, they just said they did some patching, and if you're affected by this, you need to tell them to get it together here. Because
I mean, we hear about Shiny Hunters is pretty active. What makes this one a particularly big deal?
Well, the main thing is that it affected me personally. No.
Wait. Stop the press. Hey, guys, you're messing with Jerry now. I'm telling you, it's bad juju. That's bad juju.
Right. Well, I mean, and anyone who's been affected by the other ones in the world has to be like, yeah, that's what we've been trying to cry foul about. And now you see what we're talking about. Now that it hurts you. But like, just to give an example, and again, like it's not the end of the world, right? So grades might not get released on time, whatever. And graduation is like today and this weekend.
Well, I wonder to some degree, I have to wonder if the timing was deliberate, because it's sort of like if you're going to hit a retail store, hit them right before
Christmas,
Black Friday or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And now they're really desperate to pay out. And it sounds like there were some conversations certainly before this is a pretty critical time for schools, right? To your point, grades are coming out. And so there's some perspectives that I would have, which is the attackers are starting to get a better understanding of the nature of the business itself. and finding the best times to really take action to maximize their potential payout.
Might be.
I never thought about the timing. You just that actually makes sense to me now. I've been out of school for so long that I didn't.
It's speculative.
It's
I mean,
season.
It's certainly possible. It's not like super obvious that it's a timing thing, just because, like in our case, the finals just got done, so it would have been a lot more impactful if this had been a week prior. But it's kind of final season, I guess. So sure, somebody else, it's finals week right now, and graduation is next week. So for them, it would be more catastrophic. So maybe, but. What I thought was really interesting about it, like, so for one, because we were on Slack, immediately I was able to chat with my students and say, what do you think, Sev 2 or is it a Sev 1? And we started speculating about is the materiality. Like, this is not a public company, but if it was, is this something an investor, prudent investor would reasonably expect to be informed about? Would they have halted the stock at this point? And I think it's...
I mean, materiality that transcends the dollar amount is something that we talked about before. I think and there's nobody who would... I can't imagine someone saying that this isn't material from an investor's standpoint because it's such a public thing, right? So the nature, even if the financial costs end up being under the whatever financial material threshold there is, I think the nature of the event is so public that it needs to be, there's something that needs to be disclosed for investors to be aware of.
Well, if I may speculate, I would say if this were a public company, they'd spend a fortune first, but I could fast forward. What would come out of that process would be, let's run an 8K. Let's inform the market. And I bet that 8K would say, while we have not yet determined whether this incident is material, out of an abundance of caution, we're proactively notifying the investing community. Now, the reason would be because the investors already heard about it, because it's literally in CNN.com. Like, so at that point, like where we are these days is like, if they're going to find it anyway, you go ahead and send an 8K to cover your tracks. But I don't know whether... Oh, so they were back after, let's say, 8 hours. Right?
They were back after 8 hours, yes, right.
We were meeting at 4 o'clock. It was down. I hadn't exported grades. I mean, I had to literally get grades submitted for the end of the semester. This morning I woke up, they was up, so I quick dumped grades and did all that. But it wasn't super impactful. And if it's done and 8 hours is over and they put it back and they're not going to lose a single customer, right? No one's going to be like, I'm going to go with your competitor because you get ransomware. Like, I mean, they can make a strong argument. This will have maybe they got a little good press out of it. Because now people heard about Instructure and buy the stock. Like,
actually, in many ways, the good press is the fact that they came back in 8 hours, which is...
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's actually... That's so in many ways, it's not material to your point, perhaps in terms of the overall impact. And it's a textbook sort of case of this is how you do it, like from a behind the scenes standpoint. This is how you do it well, so that you can get back on your legs again.
Yeah. Jerry, because you're in this world, but more than I am. I always look for the money ball. Like, what the fudge? What am I making out of as an attacker? What am I going to get out of this? And let me ask you a quick question on that. Is and now I'm being dead serious. When I was a freshman in college, in the dark ages, my login credential for our login credential, our username, was our social security number.
Not the password, but the credential.
The credential, that
you
say Mario Duarte, it was a social security number. Now, by the time I left, I will give them that. They had changed it to your personal email, which I don't know if that's any better. No, it is. But anyway, but it was social security number. So at least it was a benefit of like, if I'm going to break in, maybe I can get some social security number. Maybe I can use that. I mean, we're talking late 90s here. What do you use to log into Canvas? And more importantly, I'm trying to figure out what the money is for these guys doing this effort. What's the money?
Two very separate questions, so I won't lose track of them. I'll answer them quick. The first one is, thank God, it's all SSO now. So it's all SAML. So it's redirecting to your local login provider. I mean, I don't know if it's true for every school, but certainly at Georgia Tech, it redirects you back. And then it's it's basically your email address, and then it goes through Duo, and it's multi-factor, and then it OAuth dance back to Canvas. So there's no local ID there, which is great. Yeah. And the money-wise, like, I mean, I'm sure, especially had it gone on a little bit longer, Instructure would want this to go away. I mean, that's just it at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think one thing to note is that if you are dealing with a SaaS provider like Instructure and that can restore from backup or something really quickly, that's great. And great for them, bad for the attacker. But if I were an attacker and I knew that if I were to attack them again the second time, I wouldn't do that.
Don't give him ideas, Sunil. Don't give him ideas.
No. I want to hear this.
Careful there, buddy.
Well,
it's the same issue that we had in banking, which was we weren't concerned about something getting fully ransomware. We were more concerned about manipulation of the numbers, right? And we were concerned about integrity attacks. And so imagine now if instead you just started to pollute the data. People who had A's now all of a sudden have C's. People who had F's all of a sudden have A's. And you don't do that across the board. You just do that enough that you've polluted the data. And now and I don't know if there's a ransom to be paid here per se, unless you have a really clear audit record of what changes you've made. But the point is that that's a much harder thing to recover from, because those slow changes over time effectively are. It requires you to know how far back to go, and
That's right.
you can't trust the backups anymore.
Oh yeah. You're so
I
right. And I mean, at that point, you'd have lawsuits. Like if you're Instructure, I think you'd be like, we're about to get sued a lot, and we're going to be distracted a lot by lawsuits for the next 3 quarters. So let's make this problem go away. And it's Fight Club, right? It's right. The premise of the movie Fight Club was, at the end of the day, you wanted to destroy all the financial transaction records. And that's the same kind of thing. It's an integrity attack. And I hope they don't get that idea. When I saw this, the two things in particular. One was it's a main website, like a landing page. And most organizations, electronic organizations these days, the landing page brochureware website is completely different from the application, like managed by different people. It's usually marketing versus engineering and so on. And then secondly, as they started like blogging about it, which there's a lot of good info. The chief information security officer is the author of a status update within hours, and that's pretty awesome.
For Canvas? For Canvas?
For Canvas, that's right.
Oh.
Yeah. And they basically said that at some point it said that they took the website down immediately, like it's precautionary while they're figuring out what's going on. And when I put that together, it made it seem like, oh, you know what? Maybe this is bogus. Maybe this is a bluff. It's just a CMS hack. Like because marketing often owns the brochureware site, it's often single factor. 10 people in marketing all have the same password stored in their browser, and they could log in from home. And the website updates are often not super secured, but it's not an indication that the actual content is accessible. But they also said in the notes that certain information seems to have been disclosed, including, and it was student IDs and student email addresses and like things that were post auth in the app. So that's like inconsistent to me. It's not just a CMS. It's the real application. It's real data. And they somehow restore it in like 8 hours. And it's not just a matter of restoring, right? It's about, because I don't see any indications that ransomware and encrypt data was the problem here. It seemed more like a data for extortion. Like, we have your data and we'll tell people if you don't pay us. So there, the restoration is really just about having the comfort that they're out, so that they don't keep embarrassing you. So how in 8 hours do you, that's tough, right? I mean, you got to figure out how they got in forensically. And they apparently came in a week prior and extorted them first. And then they said that they had kicked them out and patched. And so the note on the front of the page said, like, let them know that patching isn't, going to cut it here. And here they are back again. I don't know. I wonder if this is the end of it, or if that's why I got my grade submitted today.
I'm just going to say, I miss like, I'm going to tell you a story, real brief story. I'll make it quick. This is when I was in high school, again, dark ages, but I did not do this. It was not me. It was friends of mine. Okay. And it was so every semester there would be a lottery, and you would be put in an order. Your name would be put in whatever order it was. And the ones on the top would get to pick the first set of the priority classes and teachers. And everybody knew which were the best teachers, the ones who give you a better grade, yada, yada, yada. It was very competitive at Lowell High School in San Francisco. So my buddies broke one night into the office, physical office. I did not do this. This is when we were kids. And they just went
Statute
in.
of limitations is gone, Mary.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you can confess now.
And I'm telling you, I'm just kind of reminiscing of the romanticism days when you would just break in and do computer stuff because you could, you just wanted to break in. So they went physically broke into the office, got into the computer systems, and put themselves at top of the lottery so they can get the best chance to get in the best teachers. They got caught. They didn't get kicked out of school, but that was the kind of stuff people did back then. And I guess I'm over romanticizing, but come on, folks, stop picking on schools, you ransomware people. How about, go bother somebody else, please.
We'll see. Yeah, someone said it was like Colonial Pipeline, that they've poked the wrong bear, and that as a result, Shiny Hand Hunters is now going to get taken out. I don't know about that. I don't know that this is much of a bear that you're poking here. All right, so TBD on that. Hopefully for Instructure's sake, that's the end of it. The response seems good in Impact so far, but man, I hope so. Next topic that is very time-bound. So last night, Cloudflare had earnings, and they did their call, and they had a lot of interesting info they brought out. So the numbers, face value, they look good. It's always hard to tell these days because, great numbers beat estimates, and then someone says, well, yeah, but I personally had an even higher estimate, so I'm going to tank the stock. So, but I'll just say the numbers weren't bad. They look good to me. But they also announced 20% cut in workforce, which amounts to 1,100 people. But more importantly, the punchline is stock is down like 25% last I checked today. And the market's punishing them. And it's hard to believe it's just the numbers, because I think they're good, but no matter how you contort it, it's not 25% down. I thought people were getting rewarded when they cut 20% of the workforce, starting with blocks.
Wait, they cut down the workforce and they got beaten for
I know
this?
It's confusing. They cut 20% of people, and the stock is down 20+% this morning, like 25% last I checked.
And they beat the expectations.
Yeah.
Really?
Whatever the hell expectations are, like people say that, and I don't even know why we even have these analyst firms anymore. Consensus estimate of $5, and everyone's like, yeah, but we expected $6. Like, well, then what does a consensus estimate mean? But yeah, they beat, right? And they're down 23.75% at this particular moment today. The only outlier piece of data here to me is the layoffs. And so like most of these things, you hear about it, they time it around the earnings call so that they can kind of absorb all the market impact in one go and not have to like have a halt, another time or a special release. And most of the time we expect AI to take the place of a lot of jobs over time here. So we're getting ahead of that, and we're right-sizing. The Cloudflare one, congruent with the way they always roll, right? Classically, everybody remembers Cloudflare for CEO blogs whenever there's a crisis, and detail, right? Here's an outage. Here's a line of code. You could see how it happened. Man, silly us. That won't happen again. Here's how we're changing things. Super transparent. Same thing with the layoffs. So Matthew and Michelle had a blog. And then this is my favorite part. They sent an email to all the employees, right? They knew it was going to leak. So they blogged the whole email to the world. Like, here it is. We're not even going to pretend that, that no one's going to leak it. And it's very empathetic. And it says, look, this company's different than it was before. It's going to be even more different tomorrow. We don't need a bunch of support positions because AI is the support position. And then it goes into enough detail about like approving pull requests and that sort of thing that I've never seen these other tech companies. That makes me feel like it's legit. Like they're really getting benefits. It's not just a convenient excuse for laying a bunch of people off. And yet the market is really punishing them. By the time this goes live, will they swing around and completely correct, and it'll be just people don't know how to absorb information yet? Or does it give you concern when you hear about a bunch of layoffs these days, whether it's Cloudflare or elsewhere?
Yeah. So here's the way I've been framing my understanding of some of these corporate maneuvers. One of the things I've been articulating is that every every person in a corporation should consider themselves a taskmaster of at least half a dozen agents or more. So imagine that for a moment. Let's say on the low end, you've now increased the size of your organization by 5 times. Okay, so Cloudflare, as an organization of 5,000 some people, is now actually a 25,000 person organization. Okay,
capability-wise.
Not capability.
No, because of the agents that they're yes.
But no. Let me be clear. Just because you've increased the organization by 5 times doesn't make an organization 5 times more productive.
Okay.
What you need to do is actually make the organization. We have to reorg to make the organization actually productive at a greater scale, right? So, what Matthew and Michelle have to deal with is how do you actually run an organization of if you were to do a 10 times multiplier, a 50,000 person organization, when we're really only capable of managing an organization that is certainly a 5,000 size, but maybe 10,000, maybe, ambitiously, without having to reorg 15,000 or so, right? Okay, so the perspective here is your organization actually has grown. You have all these entities that you can now task, and they'll get jobs done for you. But we actually need to reorg. And in the process of reorging, there are going to be some jobs that get cut and whatever. But here's the thing. If I can reorg from a 5,000 person organization to a 25,000 person organization overnight, and I know exactly how to manage that org really, really well, and to make everyone and everything super productive, maybe I don't need layoffs. On the other hand, if I'm not sure how to manage a 25,000 person organization to maximize everyone's productivity, I can really only do that maybe at 15,000 or 10,000 without having to rework the organization too much. Then that means that there are going to be people who are laid off because I can only manage a 10,000 person organization or 15,000 person organization, but I have 25,000 people on the rolls. So I can't absorb that right now as a business. And therefore, I need to let some people go.
Can I? So this reminds me of a conversation I just had with Jerry earlier today. I was at an executive event with a bunch of C-level people from big companies, and the conversation. This is look. I'm naive as all heck. I'm sure. Okay, but 2 years ago, the conversations I was having with executives were, hell off. I'm not going to hire any more headcount, more people in your team, until you deploy AI into the organization and show me that you still need more people after you deploy the AI solution. First, tell me how you're going to deploy AI. How is that going to make you more efficient? And then if you still need people, we'll add them afterwards. Okay, so far so good. That was kind of the story that were telling me a year and a half ago. Recently, that message has changed. And what now they're saying is, if you want to use more AI in X company, this is coming from their CFOs, guys. The message is, if you want to use more AI in our company, you need to show me who you're going to lay off or terminate from the organization, move them out of the organization. Because what's happening is tokens are becoming such a huge hit on budget that they're saying, they're saying that cloud is the number one spend, people is the number 2 spend, and now tokens, AI tokens, is the third most biggest spend. And so if you're going to keep using AI, you need to replace an existing employee for that. That to me is a really different story.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by it. I mean, I think early on it was, for one, it was a big experiment, and it was almost like CapEx versus OpEx. Like, it's a one-time cost for the experiment. And hey, we're spending a fortune here. It was like, yeah, whatever. Don't worry about it. We're figuring it out. But now it's kind of entrenched, and it's turning into, I mean, it was literally OpEx, but meaning it was not it still could have been a one-time spend because it was an experiment. And now it's like, this is real. It's going to be here forever. It's real. We're going to carry these costs. So, it's time to offset it with headcount reduction without a doubt. I mean, I always got that in my career. It wasn't AI, but it was, oh, you want to invest in this or spend on that? Who are you going to cut? And it was always what I would get, right?
Yeah. And it's, I think the initial one is not necessarily just who you're going to cut, but rather who are you not going to hire?
That's
Right.
right.
So
That's right.
That
hiring freezes.
was last year.
Yeah. Hiring
That's
freezes
right.
start.
Yeah.
And now it's okay. Who are you going to cut?
That's
Yeah,
right.
I think a lot of that, we've talked a bit about this, about whether the preponderance of AI is kind of cutting down the multiples on especially public companies, with the general idea that the moats aren't there. Even a big successful company of tomorrow is not going to be a 20-year forecast. So you're going to look at cash flows for 6 years instead of 20 years. And so just the multiples aren't going to be as high. And even if you're winning and all of that, you're not going to get rewarded the same way you used to in the past. And if that's true and you buy into that, then that says, yeah, we need to cut costs just right to get to earn like we did before. We're going to have to net cut costs. So I'm not surprised CFOs specifically are asking. And kudos to Jack Dorsey, I got to say now, because he jumped the gun. He was the first one that came out and said, we're going to cut 40% of people because of AI. And he got a market pop out of it. And I think, the writing on the wall was all of the FANG, all the top, 50 companies that are big tech companies, West Coast companies generally, we're all going down the exact same trajectory. And they all knew that if you're like not the first to move, but maybe the third or the fourth or the 50th, God forbid, to move, you're just going to get punished. And by the time you actually make that, it's not going to signal anything positive to the market. Now you're playing catch up. You cut your 40% and everybody's like, what, who? I'm not even paying attention to that news. You're already down 80%. So he actually got a good pop out of cutting people. Cloudflare, at a minimum, to me, they're just as sincere and gaining just as much out of AI as certainly, totally compared to Block. And they're getting punished for it today, just being 3 months behind. So, yeah.
How did I read an article about how the internet, you've heard this. Okay, guys, there's a buzzword and I'm clickbait, but the internet is dying, right? There's 30-40% of them. I'm sorry, say that again.
Dead internet theory.
Yeah. So maybe you want to
It's simply just
clarify.
that more and more of the interactions, especially on social media, is driven by bots, and so there becomes the actual human content becomes more and more scarce relative to the bot-driven content, and that leads to a dead internet.
There you go.
Yeah.
With that, how do we think of Cloudflare? Does that have an impact? If you have all these bots doing all these things, is that an actual direct impact to Cloudflare? So human beings using it? Like, I'm just asking. Yeah.
Well, one of the features that they rolled out a couple months ago was the ability to block AI bots from interacting with your site. I don't know to what degree. There's other controls for the social media sites, but Cloudflare, Matthew's been pretty forward thinking in terms of just how do you take that feature and actually monetize it. And so that's, it's good on him for that. But anyway, that said, they are very active in the bot or not sort of fight.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Maybe number one. And I would say, like, so taking that, what Mario introduced, and yeah, it being a bot filled internet, which I totally agree with. Even just like UX wise, as the last human left trying to navigate this internet, it sucks. I hate the new internet. It's all clickbait and algorithmic news and just SEO optimization for bots. But if you're in the infrastructure world, including Cloudflare and Fastly and Akamai and all the cloud service providers, you ran the risk, like assuming that we all contend that bot traffic is going to be more voluminous than human traffic, which faster is more of it, then you ran the risk of all of your costs 5xing, like bandwidth, just literal bandwidth, CPU, memory, everything in your stack, without any upside on the revenue, on the revenue side of the equation. So just costs would go up. And I think what Matthew did was to say, I'm saying Matthew, but Cloudflare writ large, I think what they said was, they didn't say let's block bots. They said let's monetize bots. And if it's going to 5x, we want to see a 5x up in revenue as well at the same time, it was really smart. It wasn't altruism first, but I think it had the knock-on benefit of putting some governance over people who are just going to run rampant and saying, okay, you have to pay.
But if people, okay, so let me think about a business model here. The whole internet has been funded by people clicking on banners. They know what you like. They're going to pitch you on your favorite. I love socks. Right. I love colorful socks. Huh?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Right. And so that was a human being that was being baited to click on it, to go visit a site, potentially maybe buy something. But if Mario's no longer there, Mario, the person, is no longer there, but a bot, how does that change the whole business model?
Yeah, so that's actually one of the big challenges that fraud detection is trying to address, or having struggled to address, because before, if it was a bot, it was fraud. Now, it's my OpenClaw agent that's buying something for me, and I don't want you to block that. So, and furthermore, is actually OpenClaw is one thing. It's my Claude Cowork that I've been tasked to do something, and I need. I don't want that transaction to fail, but it's an entirely legit transaction that looks like a bot. Furthermore, there's not just search engine optimization. There's now, I forget what it's called, LLM engine optimization or something like that, that is trying to ensure that if someone is asking an LLM for something, that your preferred product gets highlighted and your agent visits that site. So again, this is what we're seeing is a significant amount of machine traffic that is now actually 100% legitimate. And many folks on the infrastructure side are trying to figure out, okay, how do I truly discern what's bad bot from good bot?
Yeah, I think so what's my prediction or an analysis of how this is going to evolve is, in the short term, humans aren't going to be going to Google to search. And so anything that's, let's just say banner ads, are going to start hurting, right? And so instead of me going to Google to search, I'm going to ask Siri next year, hey, I'm going to be in Mallorca and I'd want to rent a guitar and a drum kit. And it's going to go out and crawl the whole internet and ultimately return results, and no one's going to get the clickbait. And so, oh no, everybody who's making money off the internet is not going to make any. Doesn't take a rocket science to figure out where that's going to go, which is going to be first, it's going to be illicit influence of that crawling. So I want my Mallorca music studio results to be easier to find from LLM enhanced searches. And I want to kind of get in there. And then gaming the SEO system will only go for so long. It's going to be monetized and structured. And at some point, Google or their successors are going to figure out a pay-to-play model. And, if you pump that search, pump the listing, give us, for $5,000 a month, we'll make sure that Siri returns you before the others. It's going to come right to where pages are. And what sucks about it is that when I talk to Siri, it's going to give me influenced results that are skewed towards not just a specific product. Oh, you should consider buying this, but it's even going to be influencing the advice it gives me, right? Of hey, I'm going to be hiking. Should I be wearing hiking shoes? And it's not going to be genuine advice. It's going to be something that ultimately makes me then, okay, now ask about where I could buy that thing. And then it's going to serve it up. And that's unfortunate. But I think that's the expectations around internet and the amount of expenses around it, not just CapEx, but even the traditional operating models, are demanding revenue, and it's going to come from somewhere. And I think that's the way it's going to manifest. And is that
I
even
wish
bad?
I might have just, what is it? Take the blue pill or the red? Which one's the one that you have to on the Matrix?
Exactly. Yeah, you're
right.
good.
I think I want to stay dumb. I want to go back to the days of where I didn't know this stuff. But it just sounds like everything now is just too real. It's too scary. So.
Yeah. And there will be some open source that's untainted, but it'll suck to use, and it won't come in your car like Siri will in CarPlay. And to use the easy things, it'll be influenced and insincere. And yeah.
I don't know. I would disagree on that front.
Okay.
I think the hope not the hope, but the actual movement that I'm seeing right now is the open source community is having its own sort of renaissance. And I would say it's not really a community. There's a whole new community of vibe coders that are pushing stuff into open source and democratizing the ability for us to create really useful capabilities that are right now locked up by you know locked up by companies that are trying to make a profit out of it. I think that's going to be a little harder for the moat right now is for those who have enough compute to create their own models. But outside of that, a lot of the window dressing around the models is, I think, where you're starting to see people trying to make a fast buck, so to speak. An example of this is Mike OSS. I'm not sure if you've heard of that recently, but that was really popular. That all of a sudden got a lot of hits because it was displacing two SaaS-based companies that were using LLMs to help legal firms do what they need to do. And some guy just said, you know what, I don't want these SaaS companies these new AI startups to make a lot of money. I'm just gonna release my own vibe coded version, and it was supposedly just as good. So anyway, the point is that I think vibe coding is driving a whole new renaissance of options that make that avoid us having to be sucked into this more corporate views that this corporate version that serves us ads everywhere.
Really?
He's positive on this stuff. I don't know. He's way positive on this thing.
Yeah. Would you characterize that approach as optimistic, Sunil? Or
Yeah,
is there
he sounded optimistic
dirty
to
lining,
me, guys.
Well, it's optimistic in that there's new moats, and one of the moats that we used to have was there's still going to be moats around data and moats around people who through market effects end up being the number one entity that you go to because they have the right, seemingly the best answers. But I think short of those sort of market conditions, there's a lot of other things that are happening that's creating a lot of diversity in the options that we have.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I just assume that the trajectory will follow what happened with good old, Google crawling HTML, and it'll be the same kind of thing, and it'll be, forced down our throat pretty soon, but we'll see.
I think everyone's going to try to find ways to but to take advantage of whatever mechanism that's there to put you on top, so to speak. We've already seen this to some degree when it comes to search engine optimization. People put in attack sites to put in backlinks and such to increase your page rank. What we're seeing right now behind the scenes that you can't necessarily see visually as a human is all this cruft that goes into every website that a machine sees that starts to, as it gets sucked up by Common Crawl and other machine learning training sets, starts gearing the training towards certain things. And so there's a lot of content that you just don't see. Your web pages are getting larger, not because the content is larger that you see, but rather because the behind the scenes content that is feeding the models is getting larger and more elaborate.
This is all Matrix, dude. Swear to God. It's blue, red pill.
Sorry.
I'm telling you right now. This is what you're like. If you really, really think about it, it's all Matrix now, what you're telling me. Stuff we don't really see. It's all behind the scenes. That's great.
We're going to talk about some vulns next, and I don't know what to call this segment. God, we can't call it the vuln segment. It's the risk segment. It's technically the GRC segment. So let me introduce them all. I see a common thread, right? There's copy fail that's floating around for a little while now, a couple of weeks. There is a GitHub CVE that Wiz Research uncovered. That was a couple weeks ago. And then there's another one that came out, another local privilege Linux vulnerability that popped this morning. Yeah, I already gave away the date that we actually record this thing on. So there you go. What's it called? Dirty Frag. I see a common thread in these that I'm going to talk about from a GRC perspective, and that's that they're local privilege escalation, and therefore there's a chain required to exploit these, or at least a precondition that makes them less of an urgent thing for the majority of enterprises and CISOs. But the people publishing them aren't going to give you that caveat, and they're going to make it sound like it's the end of the world every time. But then there's also some differences in the Wiz one, the Wiz Research. Sorry, it's not a vuln in Wiz. Wiz Research uncovered one in GitHub. The headline there I see people trying to make out of it is that it was possible for them to discover this thanks to AI, and that it wouldn't have been discovered without AI going through like a black box binary analysis.
Well, copy fail was also discovered with AI help too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I think that the key thread that I see across all these, and so let me kind of describe the macro pattern, because the macro pattern is the most interesting aspect here. The macro pattern is that someone discovers something in a local instance that translates to something that is also exposed in a cloud instance. Okay. So when we consider the copy fail, that is a local privilege escalation attack that enables you to then, of course, I mean, if it's your own machine, no big deal.
Yeah.
But if somebody else's machine and you have a bunch of other things running on it, then now you expose everyone else who's also on that machine, right? Okay, well,
but you got to get local access, though, Sunil. You got to have local access to that, correct?
Well, yeah, but if you're running if I have a container running on a container service,
correct.
In theory, I don't have access to all the other containers,
correct.
But now I do, right? But I can.
But it's not a network service that you're exploiting remotely. You have to do some sort of like either upload it to the system or
But my point is that you have local access, and you don't have full admin on that local access. But the point is that you have a way to explore and check it out with your own instance of some sort. Okay. And what I thought was interesting about the GitHub issue was what Wiz did was they look for vulnerabilities in the on-premise instance of GitHub Enterprise Server. So they can hammer away at it as much as they like, and they found some interesting vulnerability. And then they said, gee, I wonder if the same vulnerability exists in the hosted version of GitHub.
The cloud version of GitHub, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And voila, it is, right? And I think Linux is just the macro pattern is with Linux, we of course have our own hosted versions, but that's what 99% of the cloud is. And so you find something on a local version of Linux, and of course you can see that same issue across every cloud instance out there. So that macro pattern is becoming interesting because we also see a lot of cases where you have SaaS software where there's also a on-premise hosted, self-hosted version.
Yes, okay. That's the GitHub.
And that's GitHub as an example. But there's a bunch of other ones. Think Atlassian. Think Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
And so the attack surface isn't just what you have locally. It's now you have an opportunity. You find something locally, and your SaaS service is at risk. And it's not your SaaS service. It's your usage of SaaS service is at risk because whatever someone finds in a local instance now translates to your instance as well.
Yeah,
it's just so fascinating.
Great analysis. Thank you for that. Yeah. I would like to look at it in a slightly different way. So, right, yeah. Hey, we want to see if there's something in GitHub. We don't have access to even black box code, right? Because we just interface with it through the public interface, not through the underlying infrastructure. But if we have GitHub Enterprise, the on-prem, then we have all the above, and we can get from the bottom up. To do that, we find a bug. Let's now see if that's true in the hosted one. Oh, it is. What's really interesting is, so let's say there are 10,000. There's some number of the numbers that they said are compromised. I forget how they got that data, but let's just say it's 10,000. 99 of those are on-prem, and one of them is enterprise. I mean, it is the SaaS one, right? And it got fixed in 6 hours. So there is kind of a silver lining side to this, which is the concentration risk is also the concentration benefit.
Yes, but you're assuming that the manufacturer was notified of that vulnerability,
which is just the narrative here. It says that, but yeah, that doesn't necessarily have to be true.
And copy fail was a case where there is zero signal that happened.
So I looked at we went on this journey with GitHub when I was at Snowflake, and we used to have the hosted version, the GitHub Enterprise Server version, running in our own VPC. And we moved, we said, let's go to the cloud version. Let them manage it. We're just going to use it, but it'll be dedicated to us. It's not one of these public ones, but it's one managed by GitHub in the cloud. And this is about 4 years ago, Sunil and Jerry. So I don't know if things have changed 3 years ago. There was definitely differences in services provided and even levels of security provided between the GitHub Enterprise running locally as a server or on your VPC, as opposed to the GitHub Cloud version that you pay as a SaaS version. So there were deltas. There were definitely deltas between the the two versions, and there was a lot more. I'm not going to say one was secure than the other one. They were just different. To me, it sounds like what you're saying now, Jerry, Sunil, is there seems to be more of a convergence between the two versions, where they're starting to share more similarities than less.
Well, I mean, consider as from a development from an engineering standpoint, having completely two different code bases, it's double the work.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. So you naturally would expect. Anyways, so the point is that if you find one, these LLMs are getting extraordinarily good at finding vulnerabilities, even in binaries for which you don't have source code. If the binaries, if the code that you have locally is close enough to the code that's in the SaaS environment, you now have attackers do have a heightened ability to go find SaaS-based vulnerabilities with unlimited number of attempts to find those vulnerabilities, because it's all available locally for them to hammer away at. And so I think the risks to us as users of these SaaS applications, there is a slightly different, there's a higher elevated profile of your data being compromised, because if you have a company that has both an on-premise offering and a SaaS offering, you may actually have more exposure just because of that on-premise offering.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said like double the work, when you go from 1 to 2, it's double the work if you go from 2 deployments to 4 or 4 to 8. Going from 1 to 2, though, is like a 10x or a 100x. Like that initial load of, hey, we don't just have one monolithic branch here, but oh crap, we forgot about Wells Fargo. I love to pick on them. We forgot about so-and-so that forced us to have their own local version. Oh man, we haven't updated that thing in 9 months. So what about the big one? Oh, what about the 6 big ones? We have,
So I took to the security team at GitHub when we were making this decision. And one of the things I wanted to ask them, the security team, is, are you using your own dog food? Right? And if so, how are you using it and how you're protecting it? And their answer was, because we were trying to do the cloud version, dedicated cloud version, dedicated deployment of GitHub for us in the cloud that they would manage. And they said to me back in those days was, we're not using our cloud version. We're using our on-prem enterprise version instead. So we really can advise you on how we use it, because they're just different animals.
That's really interesting.
So at that time, it was
I bet
still
that's
different.
changed now. But I bet that's changed now.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
right.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, from you guys just having this conversation.
Well, it's somewhat evident from the fact that, again, they were able to find something on the local and it replicated on the cloud version.
Yeah. Well, so when it comes to these Linux vulns, the two there's a pair of them that just come out, and you said they have a lot of analogous traits in a way, and you said in the case of Copkill, is AI detected. I'm guessing on the dirty frag that you don't know otherwise. You just don't have that data yet, right? So it's very possible, and for the audio listeners, we'll say Sunil's nodding. So it may be AI discovered as well. But like my initial reaction to it, so going back to Georgia Tech again, it was interesting to me, because I used to always say like privilege escalation at the operating system level is not near as a big a deal as we all got trained for it to be, because multi-user operating systems aren't very common anymore. And I used to say you'd have 10,000 shell accounts of students on a system, and if one of them got root, that was a big, huge deal, and that's not the way it is anymore. Everything is like kind of single user, single purpose system. So who really cares about privilege escalation? And so freezing that for a moment, sure enough, this, copy fail was kind of academic people are kind of talking about it, or even CISOs are talking about it, like just for fun. But most orgs weren't really panicking about it. But sure enough, at Georgia Tech, there was this mass shutdown of like external SSH. And that just told me, oh man, I bet they just said we can't even keep up with local accounts and key-based authentication and no federalization of accounts. So God knows we probably have 30 years of old students that still have shell access, and every single one of those could be get root now. And so they were right in the crosshairs of 30-year-old situation, and I get it. And they just emergency shut down a lot of systems and shut down external SSH into it, which I think they should have done a long time ago, but they just couldn't get away with. So good air cover for them. So that was true there. But the other side of it all that kind of refutes what I'm saying about this doesn't matter anymore, right? So what I was saying is, who cares about these things? They're overrated. And I think the counterpoint is container breakout. And is that true? And so privilege escalation matters again because of containerization and, the idea that a host system is the equivalent of root, and that now you can get to cross tenants.
Yeah, I think the question, we all bash on TPRM. One thing that I would actually want to understand from my vendors is the level of logical separation that they are offering me. And if the level of logical separation that they're offering me is only one layer deep, then again, it's a data point that you need to take into account. But what we're seeing is one layer deep logical separation may not be enough, especially in circumstances like this. I'm not suggesting that I'm trying not to over-rotate on this recommendation.
Ruins the economics of the world.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's just a data point for you to be aware of, that there's only one level. If there's only one level of logical separation, then just note that, and
it's pretty common.
You'll have to account for situations where that logical barrier is broken, and I think there's going to be many instances of that being broken in the near future.
Yeah, but just to be clear, for the average, if there's such thing, there's really no commonality amongst most firms. But for the average firm and CISO, with these particular Linux kernel, these are both kernel bugs, correct? Am I casting that right? Again, some nods from Sunil. So, in this case, they have 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 Linux deployments out there. They could scan them and find that they all are vulnerable to this. And I would contend for the overwhelming majority of those organizations and those discrete instances, go back to bed. Who cares? Like, patch it in the roll up next quarter. You're fine. Actually, it's for their providers.
No. So one of the things that I find encouraging, and this started with the maintainers of open source software. So first of all, maintainers of, I feel bad for you all. Sorry. Thank you for all that you do. But I appreciate one of the things that they're doing, which is to say, wait, you found something vulnerable in this software that I'm maintaining, but this thing that's vulnerable is like so old, and I was only because of this one edge case where somebody needed to communicate with some ham radio frequency, I don't know, whatever, okay, protocol from the 1970s. You know what? I'm going to just drop that.
Just drop the module. Drop the freaking module from the kernel. Don't even use it.
Don't even use it, right?
They don't even use it.
And so the most recent issue that came up with copy fail, as well as the frag, the dirty frag that you mentioned, is really dealing with these protocols that I'm going to hazard a guess that most of us don't use. I mean, we used the IPsec ESP years ago, but I don't use that anymore. So I would rather just have a lot of these just completely turned off by mistake, or just not even there. And I think that's the real path that we should start taking. There's so much cruft that we just don't need to have as a part of it just can be slimmed down to a point where it just doesn't have the attack surface at all.
So we all have our own professional security jihads, right? Jerry is in the GRC, Sunil is in various other things. But anyway, my personal security jihad is you got to get rid of like stuff that you're not using. Our operating systems, our software is totally bloated. And you need to start, like, even with this, you guys have heard me before in a previous podcast. Look, My wife right now is like so happy. She's going through this whole getting rid of stuff from the garage, giving it away. Like we've had all this stuff and she just loves it. She gets excited about it.
Oh,
Hey
my wife would
folks,
love that.
right?
Yeah.
I want you to think about this. It is okay to prune, to trim
Yeah.
your Kubernetes clusters, your servers, your laptops. You don't need this stuff. If you don't need it,
Yeah.
it feels good when you get rid of it. Trust me.
Does IPsec ESP give you joy? If not, get rid of it.
Yeah, no, that's right. But look, I mean, I'll take it another way. So I think that the minimization is on the same trajectory and it fits the same profile as places that ultimately need a patch. And it's saying like, as an alternative to having to keep up with patches, if you just strip things down to be the minimal necessary, you'll save yourself a lot of headaches from about having a patch. And that's right. That said, with that being one little bucket of the universe, the same people that need to patch also need to minimize. There's another bucket that don't need to do either. And that's an example, like, so let's go right to the Linux kernel vulns, right? Twitter was running an old Linux kernel and they had this massive horizontal infrastructure where they would just spawn tons of these, of Linux boxes. And they were essentially gapped. They were certainly not multi-user systems. No Twitter user had an account on these systems, nothing in the operating system. And so these local privilege escalation vulnerabilities today, and there's been a string of these over 20, 30 years, and they had a bunch of them on there too. And I know this because of the Mudge report, that Mudge whistleblower report about Twitter security was largely focused on this kind of thing. Like, can you believe they're running on Linux version XXXX? And when I dug into it at the time, I thought, like, who cares? They're not multi-user systems. They're not a containerization breakout play. They're not hosted by a common provider with other untrusted tenants. It's totally their internal infrastructure. So not only did they not have to worry about patching, but in theory, they didn't have to worry about modularizing and slimming. And I mean, maybe for performance, it made sense, but it's okay that they were running IPsec stacks, even though they would never be doing that in a Linux kernel. So I think both matter. If you have to worry about patching, think about minimization first. But if you can, have systems that aren't exposed and don't have multi-tenancy and so on, and don't worry about it. So likewise,
why do you need Bluetooth, Jerry, running on your server that's data? Come on, man. What Bluetooth, or I think Sunil, LPD, right? Why do I need a printer services for something that's never going to print it? You know what I mean? It's LPD was so exploited. My God, it would make me like barf all the time.
Yeah. Oh, but by the same token, how many of you seen like binary / hash level vulnerability identification? So in other words, I see this binary, I know that it has some vulnerabilities, are bad, and it's just a file on disk. And I remember the classic was seeing Mozilla, right, on Linux servers, on data center servers. I'm like, there isn't even a freaking mouse. Like, it just because it came in with the installation. On one hand, it was bloated and stupid. On the other hand, who cares it was exploitable? There was no one surfing the web with the production server. There wasn't anybody there. So have a vulnerable binary forever. Who cares? It's okay.
Like the old Solaris. Now I'm dating myself again. But Solaris, it was a bitch to start Solaris because it was so minimalist. You had to add all this stuff. You didn't even have a compiler. You had to get like you had to pay for the damn compiler or get an open source version of it. Right? I do. I hate the bloated Linux. I grew up on Linux as well, but I hate the bloatedness from a security perspective.
I know what you mean. It was the minute everybody thought that it was a new development environment, and it wasn't. It was supposed to be a server environment. But.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about GDPR. But there was an article written that was like a 10-year back reflection on GDPR and whether or not it's been good or bad. And I looked through it and it kind of, I felt like the analysts and the people interviewed in the article were saying the similar things that I would have said before I read it, which were basically it got people thinking about privacy a lot. It put a lot of pressure on corporations, and it gave them a post-breach penalty that they could reference, but only after it was actual breach. But that cookie consent and all of that has been a massive failure and nightmare. Agree or disagree?
I think that the purpose of GDPR was never actually achieved because the purpose transcended the abilities that we had as a technology to actually address. And to explain that, I think some of y'all know this mental model that I talk about all the time. It's called the DIKW pyramid, which stands for data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. And it's this pyramid that just reflects different levels of insights that we can get from this atomic level data. GDPR, the general data protection regulations, we're trying to protect this atomic level bits about us, right? But and trying to tackle the higher level forms of information and knowledge. Okay, it was about data privacy, but really the true intention of GDPR was really around knowledge privacy. And it never really fulfilled its purpose in achieving protections against knowledge privacy. What do I mean by knowledge privacy? Well, think mass surveillance, right? Mass surveillance is not about data privacy. It's about knowledge privacy. And mass surveillance and protections against mass surveillance is what we really, really need. And trying to fix the problem at the data level isn't going to ever fulfill its purpose.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the GDPR defendants, right, Google and big those types of companies for over collecting, and it only comes up usually once there's some kind of breach. But do you feel like litigating against collection and these big companies is effective against mass surveillance because it might happen via those, or do you feel like it's unnecessarily focused on the private sector?
Well, the point is that we have all this data collection happening, and there's only so much you can truly stop and say, oh, you can't collect that data. There's so much data that is seemingly innocuous, but can still be used for mass surveillance, right? The fact that you ran this particular trail on an aircraft carrier tells you where the aircraft carrier is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So this perspective of just looking at trying to lock down all the data is really not going to be both achievable. But even if you did that, you still end up with not really solving the problem of knowledge privacy itself. What we really need is a general knowledge privacy regulation. But that is really not a thing that, again, technically we can easily achieve. It comes down to things like ethics and morals and asking the question, is that the right thing to do? Not whether it can be done, but rather, is this what we want? It's a question that Anthropic
regulate that in.
Yeah, it's a question that Anthropic really posed to the Department of War Defense around, hey, look, none of us want this to be used for mass domestic surveillance, okay? Because we know that with AI tools pointed at very innocuous data, it will find all these patterns of life that completely undermine and reveal undermine our knowledge privacy. So if GDPR, the original intent, the real intent was to protect our knowledge privacy, not just our data privacy, and it has not fulfilled its original purpose of protecting knowledge privacy.
The thing for me was, if I recall back when it first hit us, this whole GDPR, and I forget, it was a hotel room, got a big old hotel chain. I don't want to name them because I don't want to misrepresent anybody, but they got hit by millions and millions of dollars in fines because they were violating GDPR. I think there was an airline as well because they have poor controls. And it's always this, like, everybody started freaking out. And I know there's a good intention behind all of this, and I appreciate it. But I would be pissed if I were those companies who had to pay all that money for a program that really didn't pan out for what it's supposed to, really do. And I think it goes back to all of us, folks. The easier you want things to be on the internet, or things more connected, you want all this interconnectivity happening. You want to make sure that your browser history goes through all these different devices, that your car is so easy, like remembers all the streets you drive and shops and etc. There's a point that you're not going to be able to do this privacy if you want these things to be so easy for you to be using. And I think we, the consumer, are ultimately at fault at times for this. I hate to say that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like my biggest takeaway on the stuff. I know I got more excited about the cookie consent, and so that's still where my head is on it. But you make good points. But on the consent piece, right? If the general philosophy was we want to let people know what they're getting into and make their own decisions, which I think is fair to say, I think that's not happened at all. So, like, and the same thing happened with end user license agreements. It's the exact same like psychological challenge where, hey, you're not allowed to do this app unless you disclose your privacy policy. And now I'm about to go on a bike ride and I launched a Strava app and it says, hold on, you need to accept conditions first, 45 pages. And like, boom, 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 just get out of the way, right? That's not achieved the intended goal whatsoever. But it just happened, right? I literally triggered Siri and asked it to play a certain song. And it said, you have to accept the privacy news statement first and launch Apple Music manually. And I did. And God, I would do anything. I'm sure I agreed to have it, kill me in my sleep. I'm sure. And I don't think it has to be that way. I mean, I think that there needs to be someone sues Apple and Apple says, no, they signed it. And that some counsel puts together a little display and says like, look, we did a case study and 99.9% of the people on this we can prove didn't even read it. And Apple was aware of that. And and invalidate the whole damn thing and make them
that was
actually do something that's real.
That was the Disney case. Someone signed up with Disney Plus, and it had effect in a actual physical Disney resort.
You know what was frustrating? You know what I can tell you 10 years later? It was the amount of wasted effort that we spent on contracts doing GDPR stuff, addressing GDPR. Every time we had to sign up for a new customer, like just inefficiencies, struggle, like for what? For what?
Yeah, it's insincere. It's not true. Whoever has more leverage wins every time.
Yeah. It's privacy kabuki theater, not security, but privacy kabuki theater.
It was an attempt to address the knowledge privacy issue by trying to fix a data privacy problem. Trying to fix a knowledge privacy problem by applying data privacy controls, and it fundamentally won't work. So, and the evidence to that is all the stuff that we're going to see once you start putting LLMs on top of all this data that is okay within GDPR, and you'll still end up violating knowledge privacy. So if the original GDPR was written at the starting point of when AI really became AI tools became starting to become useful, but now that they've become even much more useful, I think GDPR isn't fulfilling. It's not going to fulfill its purpose in the way it's currently written. And yes, it may be onerous in the way that we're trying to meet compliance requirements that GDPR has, but it is going to be even more challenging to understand the questions of do you have an ethics-based plan for how you're going to use any of this data? Okay, it's really an attestation-based. It's always been an attestation, I guess, but it almost seems like an ESG type of approach, which I don't. I hate all the ESG questions that we get because it's like, why does this really matter? I mean, it matters in the grand scheme of things, but it feels very ESG in nature. And
remember the whole. Tell me if somebody keep me honest. This is the right to be forgotten. If you were a user, it says, I want you to like remove me from that. It was so effing insane that all they did was leave a company exposed to predatory legal companies out there looking to make a quick buck.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. DSAR, right? DSAR DOS. Yeah, that's what I called it. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad we got to get some really boring regulatory stuff in after all that talk. But we're this is great. Looking forward to seeing if we can get this episode out really quick since we disclosed the date we recorded on this time. But otherwise, looking forward to getting you guys back in the studio soon, and hope things go well for you.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
Bye-bye.